Welcome back. Let's get a hint of how the markets have been faring then as well. We've got a sense of a little bit of negativity at the start of trade in the Asian market, but ended up seeing some good positivity there. Only the Shanghai Composite ending in the red then, unfortunately, but most of the counters seemingly back in the black, if you want to call it that as well then, even if it is only just with the Hang Seng up nearly 0.2% there. The Dow Jones Industrial yesterday also seeing some good numbers as well, 3,122 points then for the S&P 500 out in the United States. But look at that, it's a sense of negativity, unfortunately, out in Europe. So not necessarily some good numbers there. More than 0.5% lost on the DAX in Germany and the CAC 40 out in France. It's also a negative tinge in South Africa, 0.75% down for the JSE All Share, 53,245 points. One could say perhaps it's run too hard, having seen this week's rally thus far, and now things, of course, going a little bit downwards for then perhaps some profit taking coming to the fore somewhat at this time. We'll find out a little bit more about that. The bank seemingly taking up a big chunk of the losses here as well, 1.9%. Of course, the issues around that currency manipulation saga do continue to wear in. The likes of Capitec as well, and their insider trading fiasco, which might certainly be going on for quite some time, is going to be quite interesting here. And what exactly happened in that case? The Johannesburg Stock Exchange has said that they're looking into it, and if they find anything that perhaps warrants them issuing that and taking it forward, then they'll send it through to the FSCA, that's the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, and they will then do a thorough investigation. But that's only if the JSE sees any issue with what potentially could be an insider trading situation at Capitec there. But nonetheless, though, seeing the rest of the markets, there's some green for the gold indices, with the resources going up around 0.5% as well then. And then the South African currency now sitting at its best mark since before. In fact, since a week before the Moody's downgraded South Africa to non-investment grade. So it's our best level in about 3 months or so. As we see the rand below 17 rand against the US dollar, it has rallied 11% in the last month alone to sit at 16 rand 96 against the US dollar for now. Pretty flat stance though against the euro, just below that 19 rand mark, 18.99, and it's 21 rand and 25 cents for a British pound there too. But a weakness coming through with that Brent crude price, a few issues around whether the OPEC countries and their allies, which include Russia, would perhaps meet. It does seem that they're not keen to meet, and that has meant that supply will continue to rise then unless things get back to some sort of agreement when it comes to the caps on that oil price there as well. Platinum and gold also sitting up around 0.5% or more today's trade, 8.29 for the white metal, with gold sitting at $1,707 a fine ounce. Let's chat to Viv Govender then from Rand Swiss as we unpack this market movement just a little bit more. Viv, an interesting time then when one considers that the markets just keep on climbing. We're not really at the end of COVID-19 though, are we?
We're not even start at the moment. If you look at the predictions for, the discrepancy between predictions and GDP, for instance, if you look at what GDP predictions for the next decade were in January this year versus what they are right now, you're seeing an underperformance in GDP growth for several years in the future. Of course, we will rebound from a negative point in the next year or so, but we're still going to be under what we were supposed to be in January. Yet markets seem to be back at levels that, some of them, for the NASDAQ, basically raised the entire fall. The S&P 500, for instance, is down less than 8% from the peak just before the crash. So we are seeing markets basically assuming that much of the damage that's going to be done has either been compensated for or overdone, compensated for mostly due to, I think, easy monetary policy.
Okay, then what does that mean for the oil price? I mean, now sitting at less than $40 a barrel, down 0.75% then as well, 0.2% should I say. OPEC seemingly not coming to some form of agreement despite knowing what the market sort of looks like. Are they just hoping that demand will pick up?
Look, I don't think OPEC is basically, comfortable. Especially it's not OPEC anymore, it's OPEC plus. Basically, I think Russia plays a bigger role in OPEC as any of the other members, excluding perhaps the Saudis. The Saudis want to push through a pretty drastic cut and keep it, at least push a pretty drastic extension, keep it basically at the current levels for several months in the future. The Russians are much less keen on that. And at the same time, we are seeing places like Iran and Nigeria showing quite a lack of compliance in terms of quotas. One good thing in their favor, I do believe, is the fact that the U.S. shale, establishment is effectively making a massive loss at these levels. Until we see, probably somewhere closer to $50 a barrel, much of the shale production in the U.S. is going to be loss-making. And that means that, one potential competitor is going to be moved to the market. Oil prices can't remain right here and have U.S. shale production continue. But at the same time, I do think that, the fact that the virus is going to be staying for a while, and we are likely to see impacts such as air travel and other forms of, international travel being severely reduced for quite some time, meaning that the demand for oil is going to be under a huge amount of pressure. I think it will eventually trend higher, but when that's going to happen, I'm not sure.
Yeah. What about the South African rand, though? It just keeps on going. At some point, it was at 19 rand or so. It's now gotten better. And yes, it started the year at 14 rand. Can we get back to those levels if things do stabilize, perhaps?
One good thing about the virus impact in terms of the rand has been the fact that it's severely reduced the outflows from the country. So imports have been down. We're also seeing things like interest and dividend payments being reduced as well. That's obviously a big outflow for the country. Obviously, the oil price being weaker has helped us as well. So those flows seem to indicate that the rand should trend stronger. I doubt we'll get back to the 14 or 15 rand levels that we saw at the start of the year, 8 and 2. But the rand has really fundamental reasons for strengthening. Also, I do believe that some of the weakening that occurred, the rand weakened from 14, like you mentioned, to in excess of 19 in a few months. That was, I think, overdone. I think the market is returning more to a level of stability. It won't return to 14, but there is a different fundamental reason why the rand is strengthening at the moment.
Okay. All right. Well, let's take a look at some equity news then. Capitec, two directors making a share trading, or rather a hedging agreement then as well, trading on that front. But it happens just a few days before they release a profit or trading update. Is there anything suspicious there? Is that something to worry about? I know the JSE has said they're looking into it.
Oh, yes, most certainly. Just to explain to viewers what happens. If you have inside information, and as a director, you do have inside information, you know more about the company than the normal shareholder, you can't trade around very specific periods. There is a amount of time where you're just allowed to buy and sell some shares because you may have information the market may not have in its hands at the moment. And what happened here was there was trading occurring. One of the excuses that the directors have given is that the trading occurred effectively off the exchange and go through the exchange. And that might be a loophole that they use to actually get away from, sanctioned by the JSE. But at the same time, these loopholes reduce confidence, I believe, in the market and the JSE. And it's not a good picture either for the JSE or for these company or the directors. So I do think that we should not be seeing directors even having the perception of having insider information and insider information to benefit themselves. It makes a very bad impression to everybody out there. So even though it might be legal, it might be technically using a loophole. Perception-wise, it's a very, very bad picture.
Yeah, it's not the first time that we've actually had a similar scenario with one of the directors as well then. Viv, thank you so much for the time though, really appreciate it. Viv Govender there from Rand Swiss helping us unpack that market front there. It is a goodbye from me then. We cross back to the World Health